The year is 2021. Verstappen and Hamilton were having one of the greatest spats of all time. Ferrari decided that green and red was the way forward.
I am stupid.
So hey, no matter what you think of the 2025 Ferrari, it will never be worse than this. Oh, and George Russell decided he wanted that Mercedes seat a little bit quicker and tried to kill Bottas.
On board with George Russell.
What the was he doing? Honestly, see a for what?
But with all this fun going on, you might ask yourself, what is this video going to be about? The 2021 championship title? No. Today I will be going over a race that happened in 2021, which I think is one of the weirdest races in Formula 1 history. This is the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. So a few little nuggets of information you need to know before the Hungary Grand Prix. First of all, in the title fight, things were really starting to spruce up when we got to Hungary. So we had quite an infamous race, the last race weekend before, which would have been Silverstone, and everyone knows what happened in 2021 Silverstone.
Racing incidents.
Wonder what the stewards will think about.
Could Hamilton have done anything to give Max Verstappen room there and avoid that crash? He was on the inside, of course. Yeah. Was there a bit more room to the right that Hamilton should have been finding?
And that was quite a big shift in the championship points, as Verstappen was starting to grow quite a big gap before Silverstone. Before Silverstone, the gap was 32 points. Then after Silverstone, it had dropped to an 8-point gap. So Hungary needed to be a turnaround result for Verstappen, putting very much the pressure on. Things were very much heated between the two, now there was such a big crash. But now that you know this, we can head straight over to practice, and what happened is exactly what you would think. In practice 1, 2 and 3, it was very much a battle between Mercedes and Red Bull, and we got to practice 3 and the top of the results would be Hamilton, with Verstappen less than a tenth behind him. It really was anyone's guess who was going to be quicker here, Mercedes or Red Bull. We'd have to find out in qualifying. But then further down the grid after practice, Ferrari looked like potentially the third fastest car, with McLaren 4. So going into qualifying, and in Q1 nothing crazy happened. We had Tsunoda, Russell, Latifi, Mazepin and Schumacher were all knocked out, with Verstappen taking first place in this session. Rolling around to Q2, and this is where things started to spice up this weekend, as going into the final corner we had Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari absolutely bin it into the wall, meaning he was out of qualifying starting in 15th, bringing out the red flag as well. But luckily there was plenty of time left in the session for everyone to get more flying laps in, so after the red flag was released, Lando Norris, who was on the brink of getting knocked out in Q2, set a whopping lap time, going second place just behind Verstappen. It was an incredible lap from him to get back into it. And I might just add, 2021 was such a crazy season with so many drivers in form. Of course you had Verstappen and Hamilton, the main two, but then you also had Gasly and Carlos Sainz, first season in Ferrari, and he outscored Leclerc. We know Leclerc got quite unlucky, but there was a lot of great racing in 2021. But I went off on quite a tangent, as Lando Norris' teammate Danny Ricciardo could not do the same, getting knocked out in Q2. And so heading into Q3, it looked like Verstappen had the edge on Hamilton. However, going into Q3, with everyone setting their first fast laps, Hamilton and Bottas, out of almost thin air, found this miraculous pace in the Mercedes, and Hamilton went provisional pole position by 3/10 to Bottas and then 5/10 to Verstappen. It wasn't even a competition at this point. So heading into the final moments of the session, Red Bull needed a very good turnaround, and they really didn't get it. See, now in qualifying, at a lot of tracks, the track evolution is very important, and that meant that Mercedes and Red Bull wanted to get out their cars as close to the end of the session as possible. However, they kind of screwed it up. So Mercedes got both Hamilton and Bottas through before the checkered flag came out, but Verstappen was the only Red Bull that could go through, and Perez, he didn't get to the line in time, meaning Perez's lap time wasn't going to count. And even with Verstappen, he just wasn't fast enough, as Hamilton and Bottas did not improve. However, they did not need to, as Hamilton would come first place with Bottas second and Verstappen third. So not ideal for the championship fight, as if Hamilton won this race, he would be very much knocking on Verstappen's door. And with rain on the horizon, things were about to get juicy. Let the race begin. 5 red lights and away we go. With Hamilton having a pretty good start, but the same could not be said for his teammate Bottas, who really dropped the ball on his start, letting Verstappen, Norris and Perez all past. But then all of a sudden, the spirit of Kvyat entered Bottas's body, and to put it lightly, it all went to shit. Chaos ensued as Norris and both Red Bulls were taken out by Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes. And further down the grid, there can't be some carnage without the main man himself, Lance Stroll. He decided he wanted to try and one-up Valtteri Bottas, and he crashed into Charles Leclerc, who then crashed into Daniel Ricciardo, which, surprise surprise, brought out the red flag. So within the first lap, Leclerc, Perez, Lance Stroll and Bottas would all retire, with Lando Norris following on the next lap. And even though Verstappen had not retired from the race, I'll show you what his car looked like right now. He had some serious damage to that Red Bull, so even if he was to do anything in the race, it was gonna be very hard for him. So not surprisingly, Verstappen was pretty pissed. Now, do you remember that rain I mentioned to you at the start of the video? Well, as you saw from the clips, it was very much intermediate conditions at the start of the race. But because the red flag had got called out, and we'd been waiting for a period of time, that meant the track was drying. By the time the red flag was lifted and everyone was coming out for the formation lap to get back to the start of the race, everyone was on intermediates on a dry track, which meant after all of those crashes, everyone now had to go into the pits and change their tyres. And when I mean everyone, every single driver bar one driver went into the pits. So there was double stacking, there was chaos, and this is where we saw another retirement come, as Raikkonen took one for the team and took out Mazepin. It was quite a shame, as this would have been the trifecta of the carnage that could happen. You know, who would he have crashed into? I don't know, but definitely would have. You know what he's like. And do you remember that one driver I told you did not pit? Well, that would have been the leading car of Lewis Hamilton. So he went off to start again. 5 red lights, no one else on the track bar him, and away he went. And instantly you could see it was completely the wrong call. He needed to be off those tyres, and everyone who pitted had got the right call. But it actually meant coming out of the pits, George Russell was second place with Esteban Ocon in third. Now, George Russell would have to give back all of his positions, as he was quite cheeky at the pit exit and overtook a lot of cars. Meaning, come lap 4, when Lewis Hamilton inevitably pitted, the top 10 looked like this. Esteban Ocon in first, Sebastian Vettel in second, the GOAT Latifi in third, the other GOAT Yuki Tsunoda in fourth, Carlos Sainz in fifth, Alonso in sixth, George Russell in 7th, Kimi Raikkonen in 8th, Daniel Ricciardo in 9th, and Mick Schumacher in 10th. What the hell even is that top 10? Now, surprisingly, after this, from how much chaos had happened in the race so far, the race actually started to settle down a bit. And I'm being genuinely serious here. For about 10 laps, the top 10 stayed exactly the same, and it took until lap 14 for Verstappen to finally have a go at Mick Schumacher. Got pushed wide by Mick Schumacher, eventually after a hard-fought battle, getting 10th place into turn 3, and then Gasly and Hamilton would follow very closely in the next few laps. And now, even though Hamilton was setting fastest lap after fastest lap, showing he had enough pace to get back into at least the top 5 in this race, definitely, Mercedes decided they had had enough and they needed to see what sort of strategies they had. So Hamilton would come into the pits on lap 20 to put on the hard tyres, to try and go a bit longer in the race and hopefully get people when they come into the pits. And my God, that plan was exactly what happened, as 1 lap later, Ricciardo and Verstappen, they went into the pits to try cover off Lewis Hamilton's call, but even just that 1 lap had meant that Hamilton had successfully done the undercut, overtaking Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo. It was close with Ricciardo, but he just about got past, meaning Hamilton was in a very good position to get back into the fight for the race win. And for me, this is the era of the race I like to call the Hamilton show, as it very much was just Lewis Hamilton overtaking absolutely everyone. He was going crazy, as lap by lap he would overtake Gasly, George Russell, Latifi, and Sonoda, meaning come to the mid part of the race, he would be already back up to P5. And then, looking back to the front of the field, we had Esteban Ocon still holding on to P1 with Sebastian Vettel behind. But with all of these pit stops going on, Vettel almost got the undercut on Esteban Ocon. He had to be very careful, but it really was a ding-dong battle between these two for most of the race, as they both knew this was a very good chance for a win for Alpine or Aston Martin, both teams that would have loved to have had this on their resume. It was getting very close for net P1 and net P2, and while all of this was happening, Fernando Alonso, who still was yet to pit, he would come into the pits 1 lap later on lap 39. So now you had Ocon in first and Vettel in second, with a 15-second gap to Lewis Hamilton, who was very much closing in on Fernando Alonso. And with 21 laps to go, it seemed like Hamilton was definitely going to catch up to them. But what Hamilton did not know was that he had 2008 Fernando Alonso in his way, which he knows very well from Hungary. I kid you not, keeping him behind for technically, because he wasn't fully behind Alonso the whole time, but still a whopping 25 laps, a mid-table car versus Mercedes, which was a dominant front-running car. He did such a miraculous job at keeping Hamilton at bay. He got very close to the limit at points, but my God, was that good racing. And realistically, this allowed Esteban Ocon to keep just a big enough gap to Lewis Hamilton to make Hamilton's job a lot harder now. As come the time Lewis Hamilton eventually got past Fernando Alonso, there was only 5 laps to go in the race, meaning Hamilton had 5 laps to get down a 9-second gap. It seemed like it wasn't going to happen, but my God, did Hamilton put up a show for us. Come the end of the race, I kid you not, Hamilton was 2.5 seconds behind race leader Esteban Ocon. He gained around 6.5 seconds in practically 4 laps. I don't know how Alonso kept him behind with that much pace he had. I mean, it is Hungary, but oh my God, what is going on? But sadly for Carlos Sainz, as Hamilton had so much pace, he could not do the same as his idol Alonso, meaning Lewis Hamilton did get up to 3rd place with Carlos Sainz dropping down to 4th. But for Esteban Ocon, with Sebastian Vettel still around a second behind him, all he had to do was make no mistakes and he would win his first ever Grand Prix. And well done Ocon and Alpine, as this is exactly what he did, officially putting his name into the Formula 1 history books. What a result. Who would have thought in such a dominated season from Red Bull and Mercedes we would get an unlikely winner of Esteban Ocon, the Alpine of all cars, winning a race. My God, we even had Vettel almost winning Aston Martin's first race in F1. It was incredible to watch and so thoroughly deserved. Ocon and Alonso, at least for that race, made such a good partnership. But you have to give credit where credit's due as well to Sebastian Vettel in 2nd place, as he crossed the line getting a vital 18 points for Aston Martin. Also, you would think, as the chaos didn't stop even when the race ended, after the race, Aston Martin's car went through its normal checks and they had to check the fuel in Vettel's car. And there was an issue with the sample they were trying to get with the fuel, meaning Vettel got disqualified. So, after that massive race from him, imagine if he had gotten into the lead, won the race, and then got disqualified. How heartbreaking would that have been? But with Sebastian Vettel disqualified, it now meant that Hamilton went up to 2nd, Carlos Sainz got that 3rd place for Ferrari, which was quite nice for him, but Aston Martin, compared to Ferrari at the time, it would have been a lot bigger for Vettel to keep that podium. But honestly, this race was just incredible. It had everything you want in F1. It had multiple crashes on lap 1, completely getting rid of basically all of the front runners, so a lot of the smaller teams could score points or even win. We had a disqualification and drama after the race had finished, a chasing car trying to overtake the whole pack, leading to lots of overtake and some beautiful defending. Latifi scored points, and it was double points for Williams. Considering how bad Williams were at this point in F1, it was just crazy. Double Williams points going into Hungary. People would have thought you were crazy if you put that, considering where they qualified as well. It's just one of my favourite races in this modern era, and I think a lot of people would agree. And for the 2021 championship, this would be the first time in a while that Lewis Hamilton would be leading the championship going into another Grand Prix. And with how close it was to the summer break, it was giving him a lot of momentum. But we know exactly how that ended, so in the end, it didn't matter too much to Verstappen. And hey, with Ocon now ending his partnership with Alpine and going on to his own new era with Haas F1, can history repeat itself? And can he get Haas F1 their first ever Grand Prix win? I don't think so. Comment down below what you think. Or just at least how well will he do. But that is all she wrote for the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. What a race. And just so much chaos. I'll see you all later.